Chinese tennis star Peng Shuai has resurfaced after nearly 3 weeks of silence and global concern that she had been detained in China. Peng spoke with the International Olympic Committee president in a video call.
The call eased some concerns, but there are still many questions about her safety.
Yes, this story is far from over. For the past 3 weeks or so, a top Chinese tennis player, Peng Shuai, appeared to be missing. Many people speculated that she'd been picked up by the Chinese authorities for accusing a very senior politician of sexually assaulting her. Everyone was deeply worried, including fellow players Serena Williams, Rafael Nadal, and Roger Federer. The global outcry grew and grew, and the hashtag #WhereIsPengShui exploded. Then suddenly, Peng reappeared in a number of video clips and on a call. And yet, her fellow players and others are still worried. Looking at how this story's unfolded so far, they may have reason to be concerned.
We want to turn now to the deepening mystery of a Chinese tennis star who hasn't been seen since publicly accusing a top Chinese official of sexual assault.
The whole world is asking, like, where is she? What has happened to her?
Honestly, it's shocking, that she's missing.
We are deeply concerned by reports that Peng Shuai appears to be missing.
All of this started a couple of weeks ago on November 2nd when Peng Shuai posted on social media some allegations.
The former #1 ranked doubles champ had publicly accused former Vice Premier Zhang Gaoli, a close ally of President Xi Jinping, of sexual assault.
Within minutes, that post vanished, and Peng dropped from public view.
Her online presence has been largely scrubbed. Like when you search for her account, there's nothing there.
This is one of the most high-profile allegations against one of the highest-ranking person in China.
Chinese state TV tweeted a copy of an email Peng allegedly sent to the Women's Tennis Association. The allegation of sexual assault is not true, she wrote. I'm not missing, nor am I unsafe.
The man who received the email, the head of the Women's Tennis Association, is not convinced.
I'm just struggling to agree to that and don't believe that's the truth at all.
Come on, people. That email from the tennis star was as legit as the letters I got from my supermodel girlfriend in 5th grade.
The mystery surrounding the welfare of the missing Chinese tennis star Peng Shuai has taken another twist.
New videos have emerged, Chinese state media insisting that Peng Shuai is alive and well. But global tennis officials say this so-called evidence is not enough.
The whole thing is incredibly bizarre, but creepy and sinister.
A major development in the tennis world.
Peng Shuai spoke with the president of the Olympic Committee on a video call today.
This is the first known call that Peng Shuai has had with anybody outside of China. This is a call that may raise more questions than answers.
While it seems that Peng is no longer missing, it is unclear if she's making these appearances by choice.
And that's the point. Do these video clips mean Peng Shuai is safe and well, or is she being coerced by the Chinese authorities to give the appearance of being okay? Let's look at the facts. On November the 2nd, 35-year-old Peng posted a long message on her verified Weibo account, which is a bit like China's Twitter, accusing a former senior Chinese vice premier of sexually assaulting her 3 years ago. Zhang Gaoli, who's 75 and married, is apparently the most senior Communist Party figure ever to be publicly accused of sexual assault. He's retired now, but used to mix with world leaders and other important figures, including the head of the International Olympic Committee, Thomas Bach. Peng's detailed and emotional post, 1,600 words long, was taken down within 20 minutes of it being uploaded, but not before some sharp-eyed people had taken screenshots. China then ordered all Chinese social media and news outlets to censor references to the story. From the moment the post was taken down, Peng went silent. No online posts, no media appearances. Was this her choice, or was she being coerced? The head of the Women's Tennis Association, Steve Simon, wanted to know for sure. He said no one at the WTA or fellow players had been able to reach her. As if on cue, Chinese state media, CGTN, reported that Peng had sent a new email to Simon. reassuring him that she was resting at home and the allegations she made were untrue. Some US commentators doubted the email was authentic, pointing to what looked like a cursor on the screenshot of the email.
The screen capture of it is bizarre and quite frankly disturbing. Look, calls are growing for verifiable evidence that the Chinese tennis star Peng Shuai is okay, that she's safe, especially after what happened on Wednesday.
Well, Steve Simon said he also had a hard time believing that Peng actually wrote the email, and he gave China an ultimatum: prove she's safe or we'll stop holding tournaments in China.
We're at a crossroads with our relationship, obviously, with China and operating our business over there. There's no question about it. It's something that's actually very sad because we have some amazing relationships over there and have developed some unbelievable programs that are really introducing the sport to a lot of young Chinese players.
Now, while Steve Simon and the WTA have been widely praised for taking on China, risking hundreds of millions of dollars worth of business, the International Olympic Committee, the IOC, has been condemned in the US media for being too weak. The day after CGTN showed the email, the IOC said in a statement that we've seen the latest reports and are encouraged by assurances that she is safe. What world of fantasy is the IOC living in? Asked the New York Times. Peng dared to speak up with force, but not the IOC, a Swiss-based organization with a history of cowing to dictators that goes back to Adolf Hitler and the 1936 Summer Games. Similar headlines appeared in the Washington Post and elsewhere, with Western journalists and some human rights groups accusing the IOC of covering for China in order to protect the Winter Olympics, which they're holding in Beijing in February. Well, after the email was broadcast, a number of Chinese journalists linked to the state released more so-called evidence that Peng was alive and well. A state media reporter shared these screenshots, supposedly of Peng's social media account, apparently showing her posing with her cat on November the 19th. On November the 20th, the editor-in-chief of the Communist Party-owned Global Times himself, Hu Xijing, shared these videos on his Twitter page. They purportedly show Peng at a restaurant. Later, he posted this video, apparently of Peng at a children's tennis tournament in Beijing. But the real heavyweight, internationally recognized proof of life came on November the 21st, when the IOC posted this picture of their president, Thomas Bach, having a video call with Peng. This is the same Thomas Bach seen here in 2016, shaking hands with the man Peng accused of assaulting her. Human rights activists were dismayed by the IOC and said the video call was nothing more than a publicity stunt designed to head off a boycott of the Winter Olympics.
The International Olympics Committee is entering dangerous waters. They should be extremely careful not to participate in any whitewash of possible human rights violations.
Now, throughout this affair, Chinese officials have held a steady and unified line when reporters asked, "Where is Peng?" They either deny knowing anything about it, or they say it's not a question for them.
还有关于彭帅的问题吗？请你们一并提问。我的答案很简单，这不是外交问题，我也不掌握你提到的有关情况。
Well, let's bring in our guest now. And Yacho Wang is the senior researcher on China at Human Rights Watch. And Simon Chadwick is a director for the Center of Eurasian Sport. Welcome to the Nexus, both of you. Yacho, we've seen these videos. How satisfied are you that Peng Shuai is all right and that she is free to do whatever she wants?
I'm not satisfied at all. First of all, we haven't heard from Peng Shuai directly. It's just she appeared on some videos and some photos through a third person, a third organization. So in order to make sure, she's fine, let her speak. She can talk to her fans through a live streaming or hold a press conference. So this has to be understood in a context. The Chinese government has in the past disappeared many people. Then, a few weeks or a few months later, these people reappeared on some videos saying, I'm doing very fine, don't worry about me. And then, some of those people eventually left China. Then they told their story saying, I was forced to say that, I was threatened. That was the reason I said what I said. So this has been played out many times before. So I think the Peng Shuai case fit into what had happened before.
And yet China accuses the West of exaggerating the situation and basically fabricating this as some kind of emergency. Who's to say that she didn't just release this 1,600-word post, feel embarrassed, bring it down, stay out of the public eye for a while, as the Chinese authorities would indicate?
Well, I mean, the Chinese government really wants this to go away. So as a human rights advocate, what my job is to keep the attention on her and keep the pressure on her. So we don't want this to go away. And I'm very glad to see the WTA, the Women's Tennis Association, is speaking up. The WTA is saying we're not satisfied with those videos. Those are not reassurance. So I don't know how this thing is going to go on, but my job is to make sure that until she's actually free, until her accounts of her situation can be independently verified, we're not going to give up on our attention on her.
Do you have any information of where Peng is now?
We don't know. I mean, from what we can see from the videos, I mean, she's in Beijing. That's as far as I can tell.
Yeah. About the post itself, 1,600 words long. It's quite in depth about how she had a relationship with this senior vice premier. It was a relationship, but she's also making accusations that late in the relationship, she was forced to have sex with him. Do you think that this is the sort of thing where the Chinese state itself reacts to squash her allegations?
I mean, it is a relationship, but we have to understand in the context of an enormous, power imbalance. He is one of the highest ranked Chinese official. I mean, if you understand the Chinese political system, those people are untouchable. And, she just in this post kind of reviewed the true face of those people whose image are so tightly controlled by the Chinese propaganda system. She was basically telling those details of their private life. I think that is to the Chinese Communist Party is extremely threatening. I mean, her
What you say it's extremely threatening. I heard that it's pretty much a given that senior Chinese politicians will have mistresses. But you're saying it is damaging if these allegations come to light.
Yes, I think people generally know if you're a person in China, living in China, you understand, those officials have mistresses. But, this is just a conceptually understanding, right? And we suspect it happens. But this one woman is presenting with such details about their lives. And then as an outsider, you read it and you feel, wow, those people are so corrupt. That runs so contrary to the propaganda, their image in the propaganda. So I think those details is very shocking and threatening.
I know you focus particularly on internet censorship. Now, okay, we don't know what's happened to Peng, where she is right now, or in what state she's in, but we do know about her online activity, her online persona, if you like. It seems that she's pretty much been shut down, and all mention of her, or even tennis, has been scrubbed from the internet. Now, is that an exaggeration, or is that true?
It's absolutely true. So her post lasted on the Chinese internet for 34 minutes. And then during that 34 minutes, there were fierce discussion. Then the censorship came so overwhelmingly. It's not just her name and Zhang Gaoli's name are gone. It's, even her last name, Peng, that's a very common last name, is gone. So you can't find information about her, her past activities. They're all just gone.
Why make these accusations in China then? Obviously, she's been a famous and successful tennis player going around all over the world. She had the opportunity to make these allegations elsewhere. Would she not have been advised to do that?
Well, you're right. I think, if you read that post, you can see, there were, it's very personal. It's very emotional. I mean, she feels, she's exploited and she just made this post. I don't think it's a very calculated or planned post. It's just a outburst of, emotion, outburst of, I feel I'm exploited. I want to seek redress. I think that is the power of the post. It's not orchestrated. It's just an act of courage.
Simon, let's switch over to the various governing sports governing bodies. Let's start with the WTA. They have been widely lauded, praised as standing up to China, risking hundreds of millions of dollars in order to ensure the safety, the well-being of one of their players. Do you see it that way?
I guess at one level, it's important to say yes, because I don't think any of us would disagree that addressing issues of gender inequality, of male abuses of power are not important. They're very serious. And I think in this respect, China's attempt to suppress this is just totally out of kilter with popular global discourse right now, whereby in many countries across the world, gender issues are at the forefront of people's minds. And so in that sense, I think the WTA is on very safe territory. It's pushing at an open door, because there are not many people in the world who are going to say, well, actually the WTA is wrong and China is right. So I think many of us would agree with what the WTA has done. But I do find it very interesting that the WTA has responded so quickly and so stridently, and actually quite provocatively too, in terms of threatening to pull out of China altogether and pull tennis events out of China altogether. That is extremely unusual, because if we look at other episodes, we think about Daryl Morey at the NBA, the tweets that were made in 2019, and the furore that followed that. The NBA was constantly equivocating. It was trying to pursue a middle way. In the end, I think the NBA was shot by both sides, because it was trying to placate both and it placated neither. We then move on to the Mesut Ozil Arsenal case, and again, what seemed to happen is that Arsenal tried to navigate a middle way. In the end, Arsenal said very little. Mesut Ozil essentially was the one who was being singled out by the Chinese authorities. But again, that led to kind of questioning and criticism around Arsenal, even though Arsenal said nothing. You then move more recently, I think, onto Antoine Griezmann, who unilaterally terminated his deal with Huawei last year. He claimed that Huawei was developing facial recognition software that could target the Uyghur minority in China. And in all of these cases, the sports organizations involved either said nothing or tried to equivocate. And here we have an organization that, literally within days of the issue emerging, has taken a position. Now, I think there are two ways to look at this. I think ideologically, you have an organization that is diametrically opposed to the Chinese government. We're talking about an organization that is based in Florida, which is headed up by an American. And if you look at the leadership team,
you're now talking about Steve Simon.
Yeah, about Steve Simon. And if you look at the WTA board in general, they are predominantly Americans. And I think that from their standpoint, what they deem to be acceptable, what they deem to be legitimate, what they're prepared to accept clearly is very, very different to the Chinese government. And the way in which they've positioned themselves on this issue is that the issue is non-negotiable. But I think the other element to this, and perhaps this is where it differs from the NBA case, is whereas the NBA, one estimate is that the NBA has made somewhere in the region of about $5 billion from China. The WTA and tennis more generally, this is not a popular mass sport in China. So we don't see the level of engagement with the sport that we do with basketball or maybe even football too. And certainly in terms of commercial partners, whilst the IOC and FIFA and many others have several Chinese sponsors, the WTA only has one. So in making the calculation of whether to say nothing, do nothing, whether to make some kind of statement, or whether to come out stridently and condemn what has happened. I think the WTA is a very different. It's a very different episode to previous episodes that we've seen.
Can I ask you about the IOC? Because if you read the Washington Post or the New York Times, they've been incredibly critical of the IOC for participating in what they call the sort of proof of life video. Their president, Mr. Bach, having a 30-minute call with Peng Shuai, which was basically a way of proving that she was fine and well. These newspapers, American commentators generally say the IOC is basically covering for China. Do you think that's true?
I think you've got to kind of understand the IOC's position and try to see it from where they're sitting, because they have already had a disrupted Summer Olympics. So economically, commercially, financially, Tokyo 2020 became 2021. It was disrupted by the pandemic. There were no spectators and so on and so forth. So the IOC is already a somewhat weaker organization than perhaps it was 2 or 3 years ago. If Bach was then to have to face the possibility of an Olympic boycott in 2022, that would be 2 successive Olympic Games that have been adversely affected by, essentially by events beyond his control. So I think what we
do you think there will be a boycott of Beijing 2022?
Well, what's really interesting, Bach has spent most of the year telling us that the IOC is not a political organization. So I was extremely surprised to see him appear in this footage on Sunday, because he'd been telling us it's not a political organization. But I think such is the possibility of some form of boycott of the Beijing Winter Games now, that I think that what Bach is trying to do is he's trying to dial down the temperature, and that's why he appeared, because he's genuinely concerned, and not just for the IOC, but I guess for his own personal position as well.
Yacho, what do you make of the IOC's participating in what some human rights activists are calling a publicity stunt?
Well, I think I would like to defer a bit from Simon, because, I don't think it's, the sports are caught up in this US-China political fight, because the sports organization, they do have human rights commitments. If you check on IOC's website, it has those rhetorics about how we're going to support, human rights, and how we're going to support the rights of our athletes. And then the IOC, is not doing that job, in my opinion. Also, the Chinese government has entirely used this Olympics as a political, for its political purposes, to legitimize, its human rights abuses in the country. And for the IOC to say, we don't play politics, but your partner is playing politics the whole time.
We've noticed that come in, Simon.
Can I just come back at that, because I think obviously that is a fair point, but it's not an entirely, it's not a complete picture, because I think we've got to look at sponsors too. And if we look at several of the sponsors, particularly those outside China, and I've got 2 in my mind right now, I'll not name them, but they make very strong, very strident statements about their commitment to gender equality. They make very strong statements about their commitment to LGBTQ+ rights. They're going to be on the ground in China, conceivably, in February 2022, activating their sponsorship deals. And I know both of them currently are not answering their phones. So I think it's not just about the IOC. It is more broadly about the way in which the West engages with China. For example, business. So, the 2 businesses that I have in mind, they're making money from China. In Europe, they're making very different statements about who they are and what they do. And they're very soon going to be called to step up to the plate and decide which side of that line that we've talked about they actually stand. Because if these sponsors go to China in February 2022 and activate their deals, they're either going to contradict the proposition that they're presenting to the rest of the world, in which case they're going to be accused of complicity by China, or alternatively they're going to call out China and will find themselves therefore ostracized in that part of the world. And I don't think there is a middle way, because if you try to tread that middle way, it's incredibly complex, incredibly difficult, and you'll end up being shot by both sides.
A quick last question for you, Yacho. What do you think is going to happen to Peng? She is very famous in China, and there has been a global outcry. Do you think she's going to come out of this all right?
Well, we don't know. So again, my job is to make sure that the attention is still on her. We still keep our pressure on the Chinese government. What I really, hope to see is that, they allow Peng Shuai to leave the country if she wishes to, because, for anybody who have done this and got all this international attention, it's very hard to live a life with true freedom if she remains in China.
Yacho Wang and Simon Chadwick, thank you both very much for your contributions to The Nexus. Much appreciated. And thank you at home and on your phones for watching. Remember, if you want to see this episode or any of our other episodes, do go to our channel on YouTube. Just type in Nexus TRT World. Till next week then, goodbye.